Hello and welcome to CTV News Across Canada for Friday, April 25th. We've got the top local stories from coast to coast, stories that affect you and the country. Thanks for joining us.
The two-day trial for the company at the center of an E. coli outbreak in Calgary 2 years ago was halted when guilty pleas were entered on day one. That means penalties against fueling mines will be handed down next month. Jordan Canigan is at the courthouse downtown with more. And Jordan, the company was charged by city bylaw in 2023.
Ian, the city charged the commercial kitchen business in 2023 in the midst of that 8-week-long E. coli outbreak at several Calgary daycares. That two-day trial was supposed to get going early this morning. Instead, though, guilty pleas were entered on 4 of those bylaw charges. The company and its co-directors, Faisal Alamode and Anil Karim, were facing charges for operating a food service without a business license. Hundreds of people got sick from the E. coli outbreak, most of them children, and 39 people were hospitalized. A report by Alberta Health Services found it was likely hundreds of infections could be traced back to meatloaf from the fueling mine's central kitchen. Guilty pleas on behalf of the corporation mean bylaw charges against the 2 directors will be withdrawn. Now, this is a separate legal matter altogether from a proposed lawsuit against the company. In court, Alamode apologizing for not having proper licensing and says the kitchen has since been closed down. Now, lawyers for the city of Calgary and fueling mines argued that the appropriate fine would be $10,000 against the company. However, the justice of the peace decided to reserve his decision. That sentencing decision will come on May 27th. Ian?
Thank you, Jordan.
While kids remained inside this high school and classes carried on as usual, outside police parked in plain view following threats made against the school.
Yesterday morning, our officers arrested a 16-year-old youth for making threats to bring weapons to Citadel High School. We also seized a number of weapons from his home.
This includes firearms, ammunition, and other weapons. Police wouldn't confirm where it all came from or whether the youth even goes to Citadel High.
I can confirm that the youth was held overnight to appear in court this morning, and we do not believe there is an ongoing threat to the school, community.
Halifax police don't believe a specific individual was being targeted, but that didn't make it any less concerning for students, parents, or teachers.
There are violent instances that are occurring every day in our schools. Not all of them are reported on, like this one that we're currently talking about.
While the youth is protected under the Youth Criminal Justice Act, the teachers' union would like to know more about this incident.
Staff should be made aware of some of the more particulars that relate to this. I believe that there's a great deal of information that can be shared.
The school board says counselors were available to provide support for students today.
I do urge people to also react with compassion. Youth who consider violence as their last resort have been facing their own struggles and can be difficult to understand.
In the meantime, police say it's early in the investigation and more details may come through the court process. Todd, I spoke with a lot of students today, and many of whom said they were unaware of the reasons around why there was police presence, but there are concerns around safety for those who did learn through social media about what happened. And those concerns are just around, whether or not the student or youth went to the school and just possibly having them as a classmate. Todd?
CTV's Hafsa Arif beginning our coverage at Citadel High School in Halifax tonight.
Speaking in downtown Toronto, the Premier focused on the man who lives in the White House.
He actually wants to destroy our economy. It's not just words, he wants to do it.
It's why Doug Ford's intent on breaking down interprovincial trade barriers, expediting development, and pushing a plan to balance the budget to the side.
There's a time to make sure that we balance, and there's times that we see that it might be a few $1 billion more to protect communities.
Hello, everybody.
Something in sharper focus after a fresh round of attacks from Donald Trump Wednesday.
We have a lot of everything that they sell us, but in particular cars.
A familiar line that grates on the Premier.
I feel like jumping through the television when I hear him say, we don't need Canada.
There are new threats of higher tariffs on a key industry for Ontario.
When I put tariffs on Canada, they're paying 25%, but that could go up in terms of cars.
A Trump pressure tactic to force more auto manufacturing south of the border.
You can't flick a switch on overnight and create a new auto plant.
Additional tariffs on vehicle parts are supposed to kick in May 3rd, but Ford says Ontario has no clarity on whether that will happen, how much those tariffs would be.
That's a scary part here. Not even his own people, I think, know what's going on until he wakes up in the morning and he tells them what's going on.
The Premier disappointed to see Trump return to another greatest hit.
I have to be honest, as a state, it works great.
2 steps forward and then 10 steps backwards again. But let's see what happens on the 28th. I think it'll bring certainty.
Hoping Monday's election will be the start of serious negotiations about a mutually beneficial trade deal. With questions about Pierre Poilievre's future as federal Conservative leader after the vote, Ford hinted again that his focus is Queen's Park, not Parliament Hill.
I'm proud to be the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. That's what I think.
As part of the tariff response, the province is asking the City of Toronto to consider a sole source deal to award the contract to build new Line 2 subway trains to a firm in Thunder Bay to keep those jobs in Ontario. Mayor Olivia Chow says she has to wait until the new federal government is chosen. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Michelle, back to you.
The horrifying experience endured by this Toronto woman on a trip to Vancouver has now been heard by millions of people on social media, sparking many questions and once again putting a spotlight on our bail system.
There is no excuse for the level of risk that is being placed upon the public because of the failures of our justice system here in British Columbia.
Authorities say the accused attacker, Peter Hans Nungu, was in custody in Surrey after allegedly assaulting a peace officer last Monday, but was released the next day. Just hours later, he was arrested at the scene of the alleged assault in Cole Harbour. After a week in custody, Nungu was released on bail in Vancouver. The details of that hearing are protected by a publication ban.
Criminally, they have been released, which is concerning.
But Thursday, the police chief provided some insight into the release, saying Nungu is undergoing a mental health assessment and will be on house arrest following that. He says police leaders across the country continue to have concerns over the bail system.
I'm all fine with giving people, second or third chances and that kind of thing. But sometimes when we're talking about very serious crimes where people have been seriously victimized, I think that people like that should be remanded into custody.
The Premier also weighed in, calling the assaults disturbing.
I'm very hopeful that this individual, that there'll be interventions to ensure that this individual does not repeat a cycle of violence.
But the opposition says it's time for EB and his government to step up to ensure the safety of both locals and visitors, especially with an event like the World Cup coming to town.
We have people who will be coming to this province from around the world for FIFA, and you have to wonder, is this the type of welcome that they'll be getting in our province?
None of the charges against Nungu have been tested in court. He's scheduled to be back before a judge next month. Ben Nesbitt, CTV News, Vancouver.
To the Premier, is withholding information from Cabinet considered normal course of business?
Standing in the legislature for the first time as an independent MLA last week, Peter Guthrie voiced concerns about how the Premier's handled questions on health care contracts. This week, he's taking his criticism further, taking aim at the Premier in a new letter, citing a troubling lack of fiscal accountability, adding recent developments in her political agenda raise legitimate questions about her intentions for Alberta's role within the Canadian Federation.
The Premier flirts with separatism and with the end of Canada. Look, we're at a point in history where Canada is under attack from the outside. We certainly don't need to put it under attack from the inside.
The NDP leader says the Premier is playing a dangerous game for political gain. He believes it's making UCP MLAs uncomfortable.
They didn't sign up to be in a government that was this unethical and this incompetent.
Guthrie is not holding back. And the question is, she's lost 2 members of her caucus. Where does this go?
Dwayne Bratt says reviews into contract procurement and the federal election will play a role in UCP unity. adding history could repeat itself.
Kenny kicked out 2 members of his caucus, but it didn't stymie the fight against him, and he ended up losing his leadership. I'm not sure that's the case here yet, but there are more things to come.
Others say on spending, Smith has been more principled compared to previous premiers.
Spending has increased, but when you look on a per person inflation adjusted basis, so when you account for population growth, you account for higher price levels, it actually has been relatively flat in recent years.
Responding to the letter, a spokesperson for the premier says allegations around procurement practices are under multiple reviews, and the province is awaiting recommendations. Adding, the premier has stated on multiple occasions that she and our UCP caucus support a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. Shailan Skalski, CTV News, Edmonton.
Despite calls for him to step down, Denis Galland is steadfast. He will lead this public inquiry to find out what happened with SAC-CLIC.
Nous découvrirons la vérité, peu importe les personnes ou les parties impliquées.
We will find the truth, he says, regardless of the people or parties involved. Galland is a former prosecutor. He worked with Sonia Labelle during the Charbonneau Commission. Labelle is currently Quebec's Treasury Board president. The Legault government is urging people to let the commission work.
We rely upon Denis Galland. He has a tremendous expertise. He has a fabulous reputation as a commissioner, as a justice.
When SAC-CLIC was rolled out, Quebecers waited in long lineups outside of SAAQ service centers, and the platform went over budget by $500 million. Opposition parties continue to demand that Galland step aside because of his prior working relationship with Labelle.
For the greater good, for public interest, for the credibility of this very important exercise, he must recuse himself.
It impairs the independence of the commission, because you cannot, as a judge one of your friends. It set a shadow at the very beginning on the potential conclusions.
The commission will hold hearings over the next few months, with a final report expected September 30th. Matt Grillo, CTV News, Quebec City.
Hockey fans across the country joined the Sioux in mourning the loss of Connor Dunn during the second intermission of the Montreal Canadiens game against the Washington Capitals. The 15-year-old athlete, who excelled in both hockey and soccer, was killed early Sunday morning when he was struck by a vehicle in a rural section of the city. Tributes for the young man continue to pour in on social media and at the memorial near the site of the crash. Friends of his spoke to us on site, describing him as a kind and energetic kid, noting the love for Dunn seemingly shared by all. This morning, the youth accused of crashing into the pair of 15-year-olds was in court, where he was released on bail on a number of conditions. There are a series of charges against 18-year-old Gregory Parise, including impaired operation causing death. His next court appearance is May 26th. Corey Nordstrom, CTV News, Sault Ste.
Tax dollars were spent so that 4 trustees could enjoy fine wine and 4-course dining at a Michelin-starred restaurant. This is simply unacceptable.
Ontario's Minister of Education sharing strong words for the Brant-Haldeman-Norfolk Catholic District School Board after the province reviewed a trip 4 trustees took to Italy in July, racking up a bill of nearly $190,000.
Parents have no tolerance or patience hearing school trustees taking trips to Italy to assess whether art should be purchased for a school.
Yesterday, the province released its review of the board, which found mismanagement of public funds, a disregard for transparent decision-making, and non-compliance with their own procurement policy.
Not to sound like a big tough guy, but to be very clear, the resources that we're providing record level of funding. We expect that to be made available to teachers so that they can give our students the ultimate ability to succeed.
The review gave 18 recommendations to the board, while the minister ordered the board to repay the amounts owing for trustee travel expenses within 30 days, to recoup the total funds spent on the art and artifacts within 30 days, to attest to conduct its business only in meetings compliant with regulations and legislation, and to submit a learning plan for trustees' professional development, highlighting governance responsibilities.
I expect that board to fully implement the recommendations and to report back to me very quickly that they have done so. If they do not, then I will take further actions.
The Brant, Haldimand, Norfolk Catholic Teachers Association has been calling for the 4 trustees involved to resign, saying this report hasn't changed their position.
We still stand by that. And the reason why we do is because, you know, it's not necessarily just about the expenditures and how much money this did in terms of the trip and buying the yard. You have to question the judgment of those who decided to partake in this.
Fortino says the situation has eroded teachers' confidence in the system, and they'll need to see the recommendations actually implemented before the trust is regained.
It caused our board to operate under a black cloud. If, in lieu of them resigning, what we're going to do is we're going to really follow closely to see if the recommendations are actually put in place.
Now, the minister added this school board wasn't the only one showing a lack of judgment, saying all school boards in the province are on notice, adding with the amount of taxpayer dollars put in education, school boards better be spending it to give students the best opportunity to succeed. The Brant, Haldimand, Norfolk Catholic School Board did not respond to our request for a comment today. Tony.
Colton Weens on that crackdown from the education minister. Colton, thank you for that update.
A new no-stopping sign next to a bus stop on Dalhousie Street has led to outrage after it replaced City of Ottawa parking spots.
I saw a lot of cars receiving parking tickets. We didn't have any notice. Nobody knew about it. It was something that it just came out of nowhere. The new sign that they just put it this morning. And unfortunately...
Pierre Ibrahim, the owner of Optique Prestige, says he fears the move will impact his customer base.
We might lose some customers because a lot of people like to have their car close by. It could be either because their wife is pregnant or they have a small handicap and they need to be close to the businesses.
In a statement, Ottawa councillor Stephanie Plante said the changes in the bus route are to alleviate traffic time. Data from OC Transpo showed almost 2 hours of idling per day was happening because buses were picking up customers and then trying to weave in and out of lanes, which is problematic, especially at rush hour. Extra parking was added further down Dalhousie to accommodate for the lost spots. We will be monitoring all of the data in the upcoming months, being mindful of the fact that only 25% of residents in Rideau Vanier have a car. Businesses along this busy stretch of Dalhousie in the core of the Byward Market claimed they weren't notified ahead of the sudden change.
So now this whole block loses all the parking spaces for our customers. How was this even common sense to accept this on the main artery?
It's absolutely ridiculous. The market right now is having an issue with parking. I mean, customers are complaining because we can't park nowhere, and now they're removing parking on stop.
A statement from the city says in part that none of the changes include bus parking. The city says no parking regulations will be expanded on both sides of Dalhousie Street to accommodate safe transit vehicle right turns from eastbound Murray Street to southbound Dalhousie Street. Now, this new transit movement is required as a result of a routing change to OC Transpo Route 9. Patricia.
All right, CTV's Natalie Van Roy live for us tonight. Thank you.
Hin Deong and his wife moved to Canada just over 3 years ago. His passion is connecting travelers to his home country of Vietnam.
Maybe they come here for a long time to work, to study, and they stay here. And they want to come back to Vietnam to visit.
But Deong says his niche travel agency recently fell victim to a major scam. He says a third-party agent found his business using social media, looking to help his own clients travel between North America and Vietnam. Many were last-minute one-way tickets.
I have to pay back to the airline is 284,000 until now. It's still increase, yeah.
The travelers and flights, all legitimate, but according to Deong, the agent who booked them used fake credit cards to pay, and now he's on the hook to pay the outstanding balance.
At the beginning, I feel that's not right.
Creating stress and anxiety about the future of his business.
It's my main income.
Unfortunate thing is it is common. Deong has filed a report with Regina Police, who are investigating the case. Now, while it can't comment on specifics, RPS says fraud cases involving commercial businesses often come with big price tags in the hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars.
Always be super vigilant. Before you send products, make sure that you're doing a two-factor authentication. Call the known number and verify that. If you see links, make sure that you're not clicking on anything that's malicious.
But in the meantime, Diong is hopeful he can reclaim the cash he's lost.
I have to find money to pay to the airline so I can continue to do my business. I think if I don't pay to the airline, I cannot do this business anymore.
Donovan May, CTV News, Regina.
To the followers of the faith, this religious banner surrounded by burn marks is a testament to the heavens protecting Our Savior Lutheran Church in London.
It could be worse, but the Lord was looking over us, and that's all we can ask.
Heading outside, it is easy to see why Kurt Broomhall is grateful firefighters arrived here just before 5 a.m.
Call basically came in as a shed fire. Once crews were on scene, they realized that the shed had also impinged onto the eaves of the church.
Multiple engines, including an aerial unit, were deployed to contain the fire. Soon afterwards, firefighters cut holes in the roof to vent the flames. Despite best efforts, the shed was destroyed, the wall of the church damaged, and a small hole was created just above the altar. Now, the outside destruction here extends beyond the shed and the roof line. The main power line was also damaged, potentially impacting Sunday services. Initially, the cause was set as accidental, but that later changed to undetermined. The destroyed shed had been set for demolition after years of break-ins. It's a tough spot for the church, as the homeless often seek refuge.
We've had people living in there, mattresses in there, setting themselves up at home, and especially throughout the winter, it was really problematic.
But at the same time, the congregation is balancing security with the need to offer salvation to those in need.
Oh, absolutely. That's it. We don't turn anybody away.
In London, Sean Irvin, CTV News.
The debate over the future of Chatham-Kent's municipal headquarters is heating up, and with the key council vote just weeks away, one resident says it's time to hit the brakes on a project that's just too expensive.
We have a lot of other pressing needs in the community besides, a nice new shiny workplace.
Sheila Moore-Martin has launched a petition urging council to scrap plans for a new community hub, a $53 million project that would see offices inside the Civic Centre moved into the former Sears building, along with a new museum and library.
I'm doing this because I'm a homeowner and I can't afford for my taxes to double.
Moore-Martin says the money would be better spent fixing the aging Civic Centre and investing in roads and services.
We're basically in a situation of do or die right now.
She also points to the municipality's plan to borrow $17 million over 20 years, saying that contradicts claims the project won't impact taxpayers.
Well, I did the math, and how much is that going to cost? So when you borrow $17 million at 4.5% interest for 20 years, the cost is going to be about $9 million in interest over that 20 years.
This is a critical aspect of us moving forward as a community.
Mayor Darren Caniff defends the proposal, saying the hub would modernize outdated infrastructure and that it won't lead to higher taxes.
No, they're not. We've been saving up for this. Whether we fix up the current Civic Centre or do that, taxes aren't changing. We saved up the money for that.
Caniff says the hub would bring new cultural and educational spaces, including 3D printing labs, video rooms, and modern exhibits celebrating Chatham-Kent's history. He says repairs and renovations to meet accessibility standards at the Civic Centre could be as high as $37 million and are not worth the cost.
By the time you factor in, we're going to have people stepping up, making donations and contributions, naming rights, those type of things. By the time you take as well selling this building in the library, those proceeds. So we start getting pretty close at that point. Once we factor those in, it will be the same cost to us either way.
Council is expected to vote on the project May 12th.
It should also be noted that regardless of the outcome, Chatham-Kent's fire department, which is currently in the Civic Centre, would be relocated south of the CP tracks in the near future for safety reasons. Stephanie?
Okay, good to know. Chris Campbell tonight. Thank you, Chris.